coming in, don't. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the slightly delayed, because we came from another meeting of the West Hartford Board of Education. We have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Blanks?
Here.
Dr. Greenberg?
Here.
Mr. Levine?
Here.
Mr. Paul-Uke?
Here.
Ms. Poland?
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Mr. Zdanowitz?
Here.
Student Representative Grace Andrews?
Here.
And Maddie Pliskin.
Here. And now the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Unless there's a revision to the agenda order that I don't know about, we're going to go right into our favorite part of the evening, the student participation. Wolcott character, the Wolcott way, and for those of you eager to take photos from the audience, you are always free to come up here and take it from here.
All right, I want to introduce Scott Dunn, the principal of Wolcott. Not everybody's had the opportunity to meet from the board necessarily. Actually, he did at the end of the summer, but Scott's been doing a exceptional job as principal here. I guess this will be his mid-year. You're good. So,
There we go. Thumbs up.
yeah, but I'll have Scott introduce this.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore, and thank you to the members of the Board of Education. We were talking earlier when we were planning for this that it's pretty special that a district wants to showcase each of their schools in town of what makes them unique, and certainly Wolcott is no different in that uniqueness. We feel very blessed to be the school community that we are, which really embraces what we call celebrating the student voice. So tonight's just getting a little snapshot for you of what that means at Wolcott on a weekly basis, and I'm going to have our music teacher, Dan Luongo, begin the program.
All right, thank you. First, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone, especially the Board of Ed, for being so supportive for West Hartford Public Schools and supporting well-rounded education. I also have to say thank you, although myself and our art teacher, Katie Zaransky, and our other music teacher, Jeff Rohn, and our principal, Scott Dunn, are here tonight. What we do on a regular basis at Wolcott is a complete team effort, and there's a lot of staff members involved in what we do there. We only have time for 3 of our regular sort of Wolcott-specific segments today. They're called Writer Spotlight, Masterpiece Gallery, and we'll be doing a Wolcott song as well. But we also, throughout the week, every week, we use media and we do book reviews. We have slideshows created by students. We have cultural celebrations, poetry slams, acting, sing-alongs, awards, and we even involve some character education in most of our assemblies. So I hope you enjoy this small sample. But before we begin, I would like to introduce the performers. So this here is known as the hardest working band in showbiz. This is the Wolcats. So on flute, we have Sarah Glazier. On clarinet, Andrew Fan. We have Tomi Adetola and Brady Narus on trumpet. We have Grant Bigger on baritone. And Jackson Hill is zipping on over from the Hart School of Music. We're hoping he gets here in time to play some of his tunes. Our hosts tonight, and they rotate when we do this at Wolcott, but tonight we're going to use Tristan McClay and Shiloh Peak. They're 2 of our all-stars. Yeah. The 2 writers we've selected are Kendra Vu and Maddie Rogers. Our artists this evening are Tomi, doubling on trumpet and art, and Khalees Davis, and our composers, Simone Almeida and Scarlett Burgoyne. So I hope you enjoy. I'm going to let the kids take it away. I'm just kind of a member of the band at this point. So take it away, Tristan.
Good evening. I'm the Wolcott School President, Tristan McClay.
And I'm Shiloh Peak.
Every Monday, Wolcott students, teachers, and parents gather as a community for a Kenyan tradition called Harambee. Our drum group, called Street Beat, performs while we enter to build excitement for the week. Then we listen while our Harambee readers share their writing.
On Fridays, we gather again for town meeting to share our unique and powerful voices through music, art, media, dance, and stories. Tonight, we will show a glimpse of what we value at Wolcott with a mini town meeting presentation. But that doesn't matter right now because it's time for Writer's Spotlight.
2, 3, and...
Please welcome our first magnificent writer, Kendra Vu, with her piece, Her.
2, 3, and...
Her, by Kendra Vu. She moves swiftly like the wind. She brushes her beautiful mane of hair gently. She goes outside with the wind chasing her. Next door, a dog whiffs at her. She cried harshly, running in. Then a cat follows, purring to perfection. A bird flies by and caws. She locked the door.
2, 3, and...
Next up, we have Maddie Rogers with her piece, She Can't Write a Poem.
2, 3, and...
I can't write a poem. My brother spilled juice on my laptop, and I can't write a poem on paper. My brother ate my notebook. My laptop was fixed, but my sister did a flip and broke it for good. I got white paper, but my mom wrote work stuff all over it. I spilled my snack on my reading notebook too, so that's why I can't write a poem.
1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Masterpiece Gallery. Please welcome Khalees Davis, who will tell us more about her fantastic artwork.
Oh.
Normally the artwork would be on a giant slideshow, so this part is new. You can start talking about the show. Yeah.
Okay. My artwork is titled Flowing Back. I like how I made my optical illusion and put my vanishing point on the right side instead of the left so mine stands out. I also like how I put a lot of detail into my self-portrait. For example, to make my hair I drew 2 braids on each side and 1 bun on the left and right side. I even blended colors to make the right hair color to match mine. The colors I used to blend were very light brown and a mahogany. I also put detail in my shirt by adding sparkles on it. I made sure it had the same colors and pattern as mine. I also like how I used a maroon and purple pattern for the optical illusion.
Please welcome Tommy Adetola with his amazing artwork.
My artwork is called Snake in a Pink Sea. It's part fish and part snake. It hisses at any fish that go close to it. I created different shades of pink because I wanted the water to look a little bit polluted. I also like how I emphasize the fish by outlining it with thick Sharpie to make it bold and stand out.
Please give a round of applause to our talented artist today.
Okay, should they sing it over here? Can they sing it?
Yeah, I would sing it there.
Yeah?
Well, sound versus sight, right? Maybe we should do it twice.
Well, I'm going to stand behind them. Excuse me.
These work? Yes. Oh, let's have them come out front then.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's better.
Right in front of the table here.
Girls, go ahead and introduce yourself. Like you want
Wait, do we say anything?
to. Actually, could you switch sides so that we're on the same side like we always practice?
Hi, I'm Simone Almeida. And hi, I'm Scarlett Burgoyne.
These girls are in 3rd grade. They came to me about a month ago with an idea for an original song. These are all their lyrics, all their melody. I'm just playing the guitar chords. Ready, girls?
Someday we wish upon a star and find out who we really are. Someday, hey, somewhere, hey, mountain, rivers, twinkling star. I wish I know who we are today. Right away, we won't stop dreaming till we find out. Twinkling star, help us, we need to know who we really are. Twinkling star, it's a mystery we will never know. Never mind. It's a mystery we will never know. Never mind.
It's a world premiere.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed our mini town meeting.
Feel free to stop by on Monday mornings or Friday afternoons to join the fun.
Good night.
Thank you all so much. You really gave a real sense of all the arts and how well they were.
Thank you, and I just want to say, too, I appreciate the board's opportunity, presentation to allow us to do this, but also what Mr. Luongo and Mr. Rohn and Mr. Ransky represent all of the dedicated faculty and staff, and I think the beauty of being in multiple districts is you gain a perspective, and I've never been in a building in a district this dedicated to children and their growth, so thank you.
Well, now you know why we're so dedicated. Great kids. That was wonderful. That was really. Nudge, nudge. That's right. Exactly. Oh. The rest of the parents and families, you're more than welcome to stay, but we understand what your priorities. That. Okay, that was great. Now we have public comments. Comments on anything the public would like to share with us. We don't respond to the comments. 3 minutes per individual and 21 minutes per subject matter. And I just want to remind you, the microphone is already on, so you just have to speak into it. Because we have 3 minutes, Cammie's going to hold up a yellow sign after 2 minutes to just give you a little warning, and 3 minutes means, red means 3 minutes have passed, so wind it up. Thank you. I have first on the list, Suzanne Sayers. Oh, and when you come up, sorry, please state your address also, your name and address. Thanks.
Hi, Suzanne Sayers, 72 Vera Street. I'm here to pledge my support in renaming Columbus Day. I don't think I need to repeat what others have stated at previous meetings and in the online petitions about who Columbus truly was as a man and all the inaccuracies and lies we've been taught throughout the years. But I do care that we teach history accurately and truthfully now. There is no reason to continue to teach about Christopher Columbus as an explorer and hero and continue giving our students false information. And we certainly should not set aside a day any longer that remembers or celebrates him. We can do better. I have heard criticism from some saying that those who want to change Columbus Day are trying to whitewash history. It's quite the opposite. Whitewashing history is about preventing people from learning about the truth, about something that may be bad, dishonest, immoral, or illegal. What we do now is whitewash history because we're not teaching the truth of who Columbus was. As a slave trader, a rapist, a murderer, and an explorer who never landed on North American soil. But even if we do incorporate these truths about Columbus, which I hope all teachers start to do, there is no reason to continue to have a day where we honor him. But let's also teach our students a more thorough and comprehensive history of the Native American people in our country and beyond. I propose that we replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day and honor the Native people who deserve recognition and celebration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tracy Wilson.
Good evening. I just want to say to Mr. Zdanowicz that your daughter was sparkling on Saturday night, and if she hadn't gotten that second foul, I think they might have won. My name is Tracy Wilson, and I live at 10 Plymouth Road. I come to support using the term Indigenous Peoples Day on our calendar for October 2018. I say this knowing that many wonder why this could matter to people in our town, to me, or to our students. As a historian, I look at the past through a lens which includes the reasoning skills of contextualization, causation, continuity and change, and comparison. These reasoning skills help us and our students distinguish between nostalgia and history. I'll bet many of you remember drawing a picture of Columbus's 3 ships, and that 1492 is one of the dates in history that you remember. That exercise reminds you of your favorite teacher in elementary school, and you think, what could be wrong with that? But it is crucial for us as adults to distinguish between these warm memories and these pieces of history that are part of an American myth and an accurate depiction of the past. Today, we live in a different world than we did 126 years ago when we first had a national celebration of Columbus in 1892. At that time, most Indigenous people had been moved to reservations and their voices silenced through the Dawes Act passed just 6 years earlier. At that moment in time, Irish and Italian immigrants wanted to celebrate what they perceived as a Catholic hero whose pull yourself up by your own bootstrap story was also their own. In 1934, when it becomes a national holiday, Indigenous people continued to be silenced as they lived on their reservations. In 2018, the voices of these Indigenous people are now being heard. The narrative of our history includes many voices, some would say competing narratives that help to tell the story of who we are. This story has to be based on evidence that is accurate, the tools and goals of historians. Changing the name of this day is a symbolic act that I hope will encourage teachers or students of all ages to understand the history of this great country. It is clear that Columbus's actions changed the world, but evidence of his actions, experiences, and use of power beg us to tell a more complicated story. We need to reveal the stories of those who have not had a voice. Naming Indigenous Peoples Day will help teachers to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kim Hughes.
Good evening. Kim Hughes, 1083 Farmington Avenue. I just have a few simple things to say. First, I'm a parent in West Hartford. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and twins who are 5. It only came to my attention recently, I want to say in the last year, how little my children knew about our the history of our land and that of the American Indians who lived here. And then I took a quick glance around my home and I realized I didn't have any books on Thanksgiving, for example, that were written by American Indians. I thought that was shocking. And then I realized how hard it was to find books in, say, the Scholastic Mailer, for example, that were written by American Indians. So I just realized, as I was helping my children understand why we're taking the day off for Columbus Day and why we are celebrating Thanksgiving, I realized that my conversation naturally gravitated toward the lessons that we had to learn from the American Indian culture and what happened, the effects of the exploration that took place on our land. And so I realized, well, instead of waiting until we change or until we start teaching everyone more about American history, culture, and then change the date, or change the name. And again, I should have said it in the beginning, I'm in support of changing the name to Indigenous Peoples Day. I think we should change the state first as a symbol, and then I believe that everything else will follow. One final note, it's a line I think about a lot. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. It's from George Orwell in 1984, and I think what that means to me is just it's very important to get the past right, and I don't think that that's happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Barry Walters, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Barry Walters, 122 Vera Street. I did not know Suzanne would be here this evening. It's a short street. I am here as co-chair of the West Hartford Human Rights Commission. In our last meeting, we discussed the change to Indigenous Peoples Day, and it was probably longer than I thought it would be, but in the end, we all unanimously agreed that we would support such a change. We felt that for all the reasons that have already been said here, I'm not going to repeat, we do need to show not just our youth, but our adults as well, that history isn't quite as we were taught. And that recognition of indigenous people in this manner is a good start. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who wants to speak but didn't sign up? Okay, thank you all. And now we move to unfinished business, which happens to be the calendar. It's our second reading, and so this is the way it works. We have to, before we can discuss it, we make a motion to review the calendar. Then we have two motions. One is a calendar with, first we have to agree on the dates and things, but with a calendar with Indigenous Peoples Day. The second is a calendar labeled Columbus Day. Just to be clear, what that means is, if you support changing the name to Indigenous Peoples Day, you should vote yes on the first motion. If you do not agree that you want to change the name to Indigenous Peoples Day, you should vote no on the first, and therefore, if the first doesn't pass, you would vote yes on the second. Okay, so that's just procedurally how it works. I
have one other comment about the calendar, is more of a smaller comment, but you'll notice in June I kind of went diamond crazy, but that's because there's confusion from parents about whether we'll make up days. We make up all of our days in West Hartford. We don't shift to April vacation. So we've had 5-6 days in the past that we've diamonded in, and just to eliminate any confusion from people, even though we include it in the written portion, now we've just diamonded in June to say we will keep making up if we have a catastrophic winter or just a catastrophic March. Depends.
So far, that's exactly. So can I have a motion that the Board of Education review as a second and final reading the proposed calendars for the 2019-2020 school year?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, just one more thing to say before we get to the name, which is just a reminder, since this was raised last time and a couple of people have raised it since. This calendar is what we're doing for a year following. Therefore, there are no school conference days or anything like that because we don't know them yet. When the calendar does go out to the parents, those days are marked on the bottom or on the back or whatever. So they are actually labeled. So thank you for bringing that up. They're just not labeled here because we don't know what they are yet. So, okay, since we're discussing it, I just want to add one other thing, and then I'll open up the conversation. It was requested last time that we petition the town to find out what they thought of these things, and so I wanted first, before we have any conversation, to report to all of you what we found out. There were 3 ways that people were able to weigh in. One was that we received letters and emails. One was comments on the, I'm not on Facebook, Friends and Neighbors and Friends of West Hartford, and one was a petition brought by our very own Grace. So we're gonna each talk about those things so that you know what actually happened and everybody's on the same page, and then we can move from there. So the board got 22 letters. Of those 22 letters, I divided them into letters that were either explicitly or fairly implicitly in favor of change versus letters that were explicitly or fairly implicitly letters for keeping it the same. It was quite clear from people's tones what they meant, even if they didn't explicitly say, we want to do this. Of the 22 letters, 17 were in support of the change and 5 were against the change. Of the 6 teachers or professors who weighed in, it turns out 5 of them were pro the change and 1 of them was against the change. So it's 77% of the letters were for the change and against keeping it the same way. They're not huge numbers, so it's not a sense of an overwhelming torrent either way, but it is clearly overwhelming in terms of proportion of people who did feel strongly enough to weigh in. I will just also say that there was some strong language on both sides, and just in the interest of education, maybe we could keep conversation to the actual issues at hand. That's just a comment. Okay, family and neighbors and friends. I forgot who's talking. Thank you.
So actually, to provide a little background about what happened, Grace and Maddie created a petition, which I hope one of you will, or both of you will be able to summarize, and then bravely posted the petition on Neighbors and Friends in West Hartford. This is, for those who aren't a member of this group, this is a group that has about 13,000 members, and queries on that page range from seeking an electrician to seeking a pediatrician to ranting about potholes and all kinds of snow day issues as well. So I'm sure you've all seen.
Not me, that's why I don't go on it.
I think it's fair to say that anytime people engage in a discussion on social media, things tend to veer off topic. People are not always on their best behavior because they're not staring at each other face to face. But I'll try to summarize, and I think no surprise, there were people who provided comments on Maddie's post. I think there were, as of a few hours ago, over 350 comments on the post. And some of them were in support of changing the name to Columbus Day, and others were opposed to that. Typically, the reasons in support aligned with what we've heard this evening and through emails, which tend to be a change in framing the way that we think about that day and the way that we think about exploration from that time. And those who were opposed to the change tended to go along the lines of either why fix it if it ain't broken, or alternatively, this is a person who we already honor in a number of other ways. It's a federal holiday named Columbus Day. Our nation's capital is named after Columbus as well. We have a lot of other places like Columbus, Ohio, as Rob mentioned last time. So there was a healthy discussion on both sides.
Thank you. And there was, in fact, a petition brought by our own Grace Andrews, who's going to talk about that, and some of the comments also.
Okay, so yes, I started the petition, and right when I heard that you guys were asking to hear the town's voice, I was passionate because I think it's cool to watch all of this unfold, and I really enjoyed seeing it all happen. And I love to see the debate on the Facebook, and the petition I started got 660 signatures, which is really awesome. I'm really proud of it. A lot of people worked really hard to send this and share it, and we clearly got a lot of citizens of West Hartford. We got parents, teachers, students, and so many other people to show you guys that they want this change. So if you wanted to hear the voices, the town's voice, I think that this shows it, and there was no petition created against it. And we got hundreds of signatures, so I think this speaks a lot, and I hope that we can make this statement because changing the name really embodies what West Hartford Public Schools is about, which is about teaching the truth, strong education, strong morals, and I think this is the right way to go, and the petition really proves it, and it shows you guys that the town wants this change. So thank you so much.
Okay, so at the meeting discussing the calendar for the 2018 to 2019 school year, the board debated whether or not to keep the name of the holiday Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, and members asked for people to weigh in, as well as ask for a petition. So Grace and I took the liberty to engender public debate on the seemingly controversial issue, so we created a petition and posted it to the Neighbors and Friends of West Hartford group with about 13,000 members. The 660 people who signed the petition, which is handed out to board members and on the Facebook group as well, were in favor of Indigenous Peoples Day. Some signers left comments such as, "It's about darn time. I was shocked when we were asked to do a family project to celebrate this torturer who never even set foot in the land that became the United States. I asked my kindergartner who Christopher Columbus was. He discovered America, he told me proudly. It's 2018. We can do better than this. Because it is time to embrace truth, let go of the false narratives of Columbus as a hero, and honor those who lived peacefully here before the colonial invasion. And I am highly disappointed with our board's lack of initiative and failure to meet the demands of its constituents. In order to avoid foreseen backlash, I carefully wrote the Facebook post so as not to post my own opinion. The petition was attached, though. So, I mean, you could probably guess. And to inform people that this vote is happening. Although I said this post is not a platform for debate or rage, rather to begin conversation and inform people that this topic is under consideration, people still had lots to say. The comments on the post reflect a much wider array of opinions, and packets with the comments can be passed out to Board of Ed members, and the important ones are highlighted from both sides, not just pro. And if the public would like to view the comments, they may see the Facebook post on the group. And since the Board of Ed's decision affects the students more than anyone else, I took it upon myself as Board of Ed rep to ask students of all backgrounds, grades, opinions, and beliefs their opinions on this issue. There's a large consensus among students that they want the name of Columbus Day to be changed to Indigenous Peoples Day. Students also suggested strengthening the curriculum for this issue because we are not taught about Columbus outside of American history and some lucky people in modern world history. Students also suggested broadening the scope of Columbus Day discussion to biology class, teaching students about the biological implications of the Columbian exchange. So I thought that was interesting to hear that. A sophomore said, "It is terrible to put Columbus, a rapist, murderer, and bigot, in the same category as Martin Luther King Jr. and our veterans." Another student said, "If we are going to have the day off anyways, we should do our due diligence and call it Indigenous Peoples Day. No one feels powerfully about Columbus Day anyways." Furthermore, I personally think it is ridiculous to teach us one narrative in first grade and then to learn in U.S. history that what we previously thought to be true was just a lie to cover up what actually happened. While the whole story is not age appropriate for first graders, misconceptions should not be imparted upon such young, impressionable students. Thank you.
Any, oh, thank you. Is there further discussion or comments or? No? Oh, go ahead.
So I just want to be clear too, because the students are involved, and there was a meeting prior. The students expressed their opinions, and the other opinion was sought at as attacking the students. And I want you to very clearly understand I'm not attacking any opinion here or any of the students. So please don't be mistaken by this. And I've been on the board for 5 years now, and it is very clear when there is a town issue. It is overwhelmingly communicated to us by hundreds of people. Not by 6 people that come up here. It's by hundreds and hundreds of emails and hundreds of comments. We get inundated by it, and we just didn't get it at this time either. We could talk about the numbers on 13,000 members with 660 people that actually responded. It's only 5%. It's not overwhelming. And I actually thought that this was originally a school, and I did the numbers there. Out of the 1,660 people, say at Hall, that would probably sign up for it, that would be 40%. Again, not overwhelming. It's under 50%. And I'm just attacking this, not attacking it, but I'm talking about numbers and where we, as elected officials, have to take the majority typically in mind about when we make changes and how we make changes. And if you do look at the Facebook posts and the numbers that were represented, the comments were another whole issue that weren't really counted up. And I was surprised by the comments, and I apologize for the way some of the people treated you on there as well. I think I made a comment I would like to have seen whether people were in support or not, just not in support. But that's neither here nor there. You guys, obviously, thank you for taking the lead on this. You guys did a great job. So it was overwhelmingly, I think, generalized. In the emails that we got that that Cheryl suggested, 22 letters, 17 in support, 5 against. In our world, that is not an overwhelming response at all. That's an everyday. Every day we get those. That's how many emails we get typically. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but and we talk about, there were some words used here: rape, murderer, the things that, and of course, we want to correct the lies, but our curriculum does do that. Our curriculum does take into account what and how Columbus and what the indigenous people did. We have an Indian history piece. Native American history piece. And I was thinking about this, and I've said this before, we attack Christopher Columbus. Why Christopher Columbus? Why not Jefferson that said 600 slaves, 600 plus? Why not Washington that 317? Madison had 100 plus. Monroe had 75 slaves. I've said this before, I say it jokingly. If you want to get rid of the imagery in your pocket, I will certainly take it away from you. If you want to give me that imagery that offends you with Washington and Jefferson. I guess where does it stop? And I said this before, I'm not going to fall on my sword on this one, but at some point, where does it stop? Jefferson, Washington, do we change our capital's name? Is anybody infallible? Has anyone talked about the Native Americans and the savagery among them their own selves? No, we haven't talked about that, but yet it exists. None of the tribes throughout through Native Americans are infallible. They grew by attacking other tribes. It was brutal. And we should know that too. But we're somehow got caught up on this national movement, because it is a national movement for Indigenous Peoples Day. It's not this is not a cultivated thing here in West Hartford's a grassroots effort. This is a national effort, and I just, I just think that this is not an all or nothing. I mentioned it the last time we were here. If you don't want Columbus Day, I mentioned Discoveries Day. Talk about the Vikings. Talk about the land bridge that the indigenous people came through over Southwest Asia and things like that. Columbus, I never thought discovered the United States. I knew he discovered the Americas. I know he was one of the first European discoveries of the Americas, not North America, not United States, but the Americas, and we kind of forget that. So I guess it's all or nothing, and no in between. I find kind of disingenuous, because there's history here, and we can look at it and even come up with a better resource or name than Indigenous Peoples Day. They weren't infallible either. And there has not been overwhelming support for this. There has been support, but there's been counter support as well. And if I look at that objectively, I have to, then where my vote would go. But I would also consider that we also look at anything all or nothing, not just Indigenous Peoples Day. Discovery Day, I mean, you call it what you want, America's Day or something. But there's a lot of history. What this country looks like today from Eastern European influence, and I guess we'll never know what it looked like any other way. But we can say that about every country on the face of the earth. Every fake country has been invaded at some point. I use this as Southwest Asia has 5% of Genghis Khan's DNA in their history. Now, that represents 2% or I think 0.2% of the nation's or the world's population of Genghis Khan. Now, we don't celebrate him, but I just give you an example of how these countries were developed throughout our history. Like it or not, listen, I'm not saying that was the way to do it. That was just, and I'm not condoning it, but I'm just giving you an example of, are we ashamed of our past and things that we've done, slavery and such? Yes, of course. But if I want to go down this path too. When we were changing, or when the opportunity came to change the logos for the two high schools, and I just want to make this correction, that there was never a mascot at any high school. We never had one. It was the logo issue. Or a couple of board members at the time wanted to work with the local tribes to come up with imagery that was appropriate, that they would deem appropriate for the two high schools, and they were ready to work with the two high schools. And then an educational piece of why those imageries exist. And we went through this, what 2 feathers up on an imagery and 2 feathers down mean much, much different things. And tribes are very local. In Florida, the Seminole Indians embrace their heritage. It's on the Florida license plate. But that's local Florida issues. That's not Connecticut issues. The Pequots here and such, the tribals that are here in Connecticut, we should be working with in order to come up with some of these solutions, and we haven't offered that here yet. I tried to offer it when we had the imagery issue for the two high schools, and it got voted down. Understand, I know how that works, but I think we're missing a good component here, that we can actually add a piece of our local tribes, Native Americans, to help educate us and talk about these issues. And we didn't do that here. We tried to do it with that, and it didn't work. So that's my 2 cents. We've talked about it before. I'm not saying that we should keep it Columbus Day. I'm not saying we should have Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm saying we had a discussion about it. So that's all I have to say.
I'll go. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the insights. At our last meeting, we had some discussion about the board reaching out on certain issues, and I kind of did some research. I wanted to find out, when did the board reach out? And as you mentioned, Mark, there was a lot of interest and input about the imagery logo issue. Also, the board reached out many years ago about naming the new middle school, whether it should be Bristow or Roger Sperry. Roger Sperry was a Hall graduate, Nobel Prize winner. And maybe we should think about naming this, no, naming the Hall Science Labs. There might be an opportunity there. And Tracy Wilson, you're in the audience. I found an article in The Current interviewing your class back in, I think, 2004. Get their thoughts on the naming issue. So we reached out at that time. Another time you'll remember, Mark, I think you were on the board for this, eliminating the full week of February vacation. The board did a poll, and they reached out. And I think the article was a little clear, and I wasn't as involved then. I don't know. I couldn't tell if the poll included Veterans Day or not, but there was some discussion about they were also going to have school on Veterans Day and reach out to the veterans to make sure they were comfortable about that. Another one that I was particularly involved in was Charter Oak, whether to refurbish the existing school or to build a brand new school. And that was an issue that was very important in the neighborhood, both pros and cons. But with all these examples, they're very big issues. Naming a school is a big thing, a lasting issue. You know, eliminating a week of vacation, changing the calendar dramatically is something that really impacts a lot of people. And it was right to get input there. Building a new school or tearing down an old school, that affected a lot of people as well. And the imagery issue, as we mentioned. I just don't know that this issue we're discussing, changing the name of a holiday, rises to the occasion of demanding outcry from the citizens one way or the other. It's more of an administrative decision. It's the name on a calendar. We're not adding something. We're not changing a day off. It's just the name. So for that reason, I don't feel it's necessary to have the large input that would be nice to have if we received it, but I don't feel it's a requirement to do that. Now, I want to tell you, I brought a copy. I mentioned last time Howard Zinn, The People's History of the United States. I read this, actually I have to correct myself. I said I read it in college. I actually got to read it after college when I went to Japan, and English language books were a rare find. And I went through this. It's the size of a Harry Potter book, just as interesting. I marked out a section, but I just can't bring myself to, to give you an example of what Columbus did to the natives in the lands that he felt that he discovered. Well, those folks were already there, but I can't bring myself to read it. It's just, there may be kids watching. And let's just say that the natives in Haiti were given an impossible task. They had to collect a certain amount of gold. And once they got that gold, they received a copper token that they wore around their neck. And if any native was caught without the copper token, they received a drastic punishment. And like I said, I'm not going to discuss it here. But that one paragraph alone is enough for me to say, you know what, we should not be honoring this gentleman. To quote one of the emails we received, West Hartford should set an example. We should be exemplary. And for that reason, I will vote for the calendar that references Indigenous Peoples Day.
I'll say something. I just want to compliment Grace and Maddie as well on taking the time to do this. I think as young people, I still think of myself as a young person, but not young like you guys. It takes a lot of courage to do what you did, and that shouldn't be discounted. I will second Cheryl's point that unfortunately in this day and age, people send things in via email that aren't nice, but also disappointingly will also post things. I don't often say things here, but I followed your petition very closely, and I kept in regular tabs because I too was curious at the level of engagement the town would take in it. So kudos to you guys, and continue doing these kind of things as you grow, because it can make change. All that being said, I'm probably not in support of it, but that doesn't matter. You will find that throughout your life, that you will fight fights, you will go after things. People will not always agree with you. You can agree to disagree. And that doesn't mean that the people that disagree with you are bad people. A lot of good people just don't agree on things. So kudos to you. I do want to say the reason why I'm not in favor of it is just because, like I said at the last meeting, there already is an Indigenous Peoples Day, just to remind the board. The United Nations passed a resolution 25 years ago creating this holiday. And originally they put it in August for whatever reason. And then I read something that they recently, I think just in the last year, decided to actually muscle into the Columbus Day holiday and say, well, you know what, we're going to take ownership of this. And we're not saying to get rid of Columbus Day, but we want to then also kind of signify and say, like, this Indigenous Peoples Day is a day that we should recognize as well, and we're going to go right on that same day. Which kind of, I think, goes to my previous point that people might agree or disagree about how things should be represented, and sometimes you can come to a meeting of the minds and actually share. And it doesn't have to be one way or the other. So the day actually already exists on Columbus Day. What we're doing, you're right, Dave, is just an administrative function of, do we want to change the name? Because as Mark said earlier, I don't know if everyone's aware, the curriculum does teach about who Christopher Columbus really is. And I do think it's important to acknowledge that you need to be sensitive to the age of the ears that are learning about history. It doesn't mean you should advocate for mistruths or things or whitewash things to make people sound like heroes when they really aren't. I just personally don't know that I want my second grader hearing about some of the things that Dave won't even read about in a public comment. That's the progressive nation that we are, is that as we grow and as we age and we learn about things and the real things that happened, as our minds maybe develop to a point where it's appropriate so that your kid doesn't have nightmares. So I do think that a lot is already being done, and that's why I'm not in favor of it, because it's just it's a federal holiday that's a name on a calendar. I think the important work is done in the classroom, and I've always felt that way. And kudos to our teachers. I'm a huge fan of teachers. I have to be. I'm married to one. But so I hear it every day about the challenges that they face in the classroom, and I'm a huge fan of history. Those folks too do a great job in teaching what really happened. So that's the main reason why I don't see the impact in changing the name. The real work is done in the classroom. That's where the real learning takes place. I also noticed in the petition that a lot of people said, I just want the day off. I don't really care what it's called. Maybe that's what we should be really voting on tonight. And that while there was a larger percentage of people that were in favor of changing the name versus keeping it the same, there was, I thought, a rather substantial vocal minority that did not want the name changed. So, I mean, again, it's all about agreeing to disagree. And I think the main point really should be about what the main goal is, about educating our young learners about the truth. And that happens in the classroom, not on a calendar. Thanks.
I do want to just weigh in to just observe for a second that I quite agree with Mark. We have to teach this, and we have to go to the local folks who can help us teach it. But I just want to say that's not ours. No, I'm not saying you are. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that what all we can do is acknowledge that there are multiple perspectives by reminding people it's not just Columbus Day. There are multiple perspectives. What also has to happen is these curricular changes, and it seems quite clear, first of all, that these are happening, bravo, and second of all, that we are all in favor of those curricular changes. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Of that too, because we're very fortunate in here in Connecticut to have some very organized, mature tribes, and I don't know how we can introduce that. We tried, but it's something that maybe we can look forward to down the road, because not every state is as fortunate as us to have the lineage that still exists here in Connecticut. So I know I want to follow up, but I know that.
So I first want to say what an honor it is to serve on this board with all of our colleagues here. I certainly do believe that we have the best interest of our young people at heart. I say that to say that being in this position certainly reflects that there were views and thoughts that were shared that brought me to where I am right now. But I think one of the pieces that's really important to be an effective leader is to be able to listen and to be able to hear the thoughts and ideas of others and to incorporate those thoughts and ideas and to help be proactive in moving forward and planning forward. I say that to say that I too am in favor of changing the day to Indigenous Peoples Day for a host of reasons. For one, I certainly do believe it's important for us to promote education in a way that's enlightening, that's empowering, and that's accurate. I know that a comment was made about concerns of the appropriateness of certain subjects being shared with younger children. I certainly agree with that as well. However, we also must recognize that there are some realities that some people of some backgrounds don't have the choice to choose whether or not to study. It is imposed upon them, either because of family history, either because of current history, and I think that unfortunately reflects how in many cultures or privileged cultures, how persons can choose to do so. I think it's important for what we do tonight in terms of how we vote accurately reflects the ambitions and the goals that we have as a board and as a town. I certainly respect that we are not voting on the curriculum. I understand that. I know that many positions have been shared, or rather voices have been shared, that currently the curriculum is highlighting these pieces. But I will say, as I said from before, I do believe it's important that the calendar that we do vote on is congruent with the work that's being done in the classrooms. And I also believe that you lead by example. So I think that it's not just about a day. It's much more than just changing a name. It's planting a seed. It's sending a message not only to our children, but to other children as well, not only in our town, but other towns as well. That's how you lead by example. And I am someone certainly that believes in working together, but I also believe in standing for integrity and standing for what is in the best interest of all of our children, because our children are our leaders. They're going to be our leaders for tomorrow. So for today, we must set a good example for them.
Maddie and Grace, I too would like to thank you for taking on that task of getting that petition out there. I remember when we were discussing it, you jumped up right away and you said, I'll do it. And Maddie and you were both on board. And I think what a wonderful example for your peers to look up to you as a leader and also to support you in that task by weighing in, whether it's for or whether it's against, and realizing that all opinions count. And I too, received all the emails and all the information that was coming in that was either pro or that was against. And Mark, I appreciate your passion in terms of what you shared with us, especially being part of the board that was debating the imagery between Conard and Hall and trying to involve the tribes in our state. And perhaps at that time it didn't work, but I do know the tribes go through different leadership, so perhaps now would be a better time to reach out to them and provide our district with history in terms of the position and where they stand, why they feel the way that they do, the impact of their culture and their customs. Now, what we're debating is whether we stay with Columbus Day or whether we go with Indigenous Peoples Day. And as I said at our last meeting, I do know that around the country there has been changes in communities and districts why we should change this from Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day. And I don't want to repeat everything that was said earlier. And history is history. But because the history was written the way that it was, doesn't make it truthful. And if we are educating our students, we need to educate them properly. And of course, we're going to do it in a way that's appropriate for their particular age. But at the same time, we have to be careful about sending mixed messages or sending information that's not true. Because when they get older, they're going to ask us those same questions. Well, if you knew that it wasn't true, why were we taught something when you knew it wasn't so? I also heard something else, but when you know better, aren't you supposed to do better? We teach our children this, so our children are looking to us and saying, you're the example, and so you need to teach us what's appropriate. So we know all the horrific things that Columbus did, but yet and still we have this day that we're celebrating, and it's on our calendar. So wouldn't it be the more appropriate thing to do is to change the day to reflect all the people that were impacted by this gentleman who thought that he discovered a place and called it a name when this place was already occupied by people who were in this land. And they were different from Christopher Columbus and his crew. So did that make it okay that they were different? So we're now going to change your culture, or we're going to impose our culture on you or on your culture because what we have or what we bring is different and we think it's better. So we want to make you like us instead of perhaps maybe working together. No. I don't think that we should continue to say, or I don't think we should continue to have Columbus Day on our calendar, especially knowing the history. So it's almost like we can teach it in our curriculum, but we'll continue to have it on our calendar as Columbus Day. We need to, be in sync with what we're teaching. If we are teaching correct information in our educational curriculum, why not reflect that in our calendar? We are just saying we want to change it from Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day on our calendar. We're still teaching all of the historical information that is accurate because we know that we have excellent teachers and administrators to make sure that will happen. I am in support of changing this to Indigenous Peoples Day because it is the right thing to do. When you know better, you are supposed to do better, and we're examples. A few of my colleagues said that we're leaders, and we've heard from a number of you. Maybe it wasn't overwhelming. This issue isn't as huge to some people as other issues are, but we are elected officials, and if we feel as though that it is proper to change the name to reflect what it's really all about and celebrate and tell the stories of the indigenous people who were affected by all what Columbus and his crew and others that followed, then we should do that. And so for that, I'm in support of changing the name.
So I would just like to think that just because I have a difference of opinion that I still hold some integrity and that I'm part of the leader in this town. So Lorna, you may have tried to call me out on that, but unfortunately I still think I have some integrity.
I must say, I preface by saying we work as a team. We work together for the best interest of our children, speaking of all of us here.
Yeah, okay. Didn't hear it that way, but anyway, and I wanted to make this also possibly before everyone actually spoke, so it didn't seem so ingenuous, is that I'd like to make a motion that we actually change the calendar to be in school that day and use that piece, because we all talk about education here. And, Dave brought a book. I read it while we were here. Well, I didn't read the book. I read
Dr. Wilson, we've just got Zdanowicz's reading Howard Zinn. Yeah. That's something.
I read, yes. I read a piece, so I just, so I'd like, because if we're talking about education, we're not here about to change the curriculum. I happen to be a veteran of 25 years in the military, and I know we don't celebrate Veterans Day anymore. I don't have a problem with that. I, in fact, enjoy going to the school. No, we don't take this day off. We celebrate it, and I enjoy going to schools that day and talk to the kids, and I've done that. Sorry, I miscommunicated that. So I think it's an opportunity here also to be a leader and show that, that we are in support of that educational piece and actually go to school that day. Now, happens to be a big college parents' weekend day, but parents are going to do what they want to do for college anyway, whether they're day off from school or not. So I would like to make a motion that we actually go to school during that day for the 2019-2020 calendar.
Technically, don't anybody second it yet, because once you make a motion and second it, we have to discuss it, and I have no problem discussing it because I actually agree with you. But I'm not sure that we can actually do it for next year. So you...
Yeah, I'll be on. Well, it wouldn't be next year. It'd be the 1920 year is what you're bringing up. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'd rather really have that. I mean, it's up to you. You're the Board of Education. There are contracts involved that include Columbus Day. There are shifts that, before there's been more discussion about something like that that's gone forward. And with there is a uniform calendar issue. I'm not saying not to. I'm just saying that I would need some legal advice before I told you what to do on that.
Thank you.
Not
That's
told you what to do, but
no. But I mean, what I
then I'll tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Once it's ratification.
We're not worried about that, Tom. We know. I mean, on the face of it, I actually do agree. I think there's lots of reasons. There's 5-day weeks that we keep losing. There's lots of arguments for it, but there are also arguments against it. And talk about wanting to hear other people's views. This is what I wouldn't want to decide on the spur of the moment. But I also had it written down to take up later. So I'm wondering if we can ask to think about this question going forward rather than on this, to investigate the question. Is it, or are you literally talking about doing it right now?
No, I mean, if we need some legal advice because of teachers' contracts, I completely understand. But, because of the argument that took here today, I don't think we need to go out to the public on this one, because you as leaders and wanted with integrity and lead forward that we can make these decisions without, because that was the argument, because it wasn't overwhelming from the, so I don't necessarily think we have to go out and I think going out to the public is a good thing, but seeing that in this case we did and there was no overwhelming support, and still making a decision as such that we follow suit in just that case.
So if I may just remind that I did mention, the board, past version of the board, went out, reached out to the public when it came to affecting people with a day off or a whole week off here. So I think we did make that argument. I specifically mentioned that I feel there are two different things there. You're doing a whole lot of impact when you're telling people whether to come to school or not to come to school. I also would consider thinking about it with all the snow days we've had, but I would also be interested in hearing from students and things like that before making such a drastic change, and the legal.
Yeah, the only thing, I do think that there would be a lot of community interest in that, maybe not in the younger years, but I know when you get to high school specifically, the issue is fall sports. For students that participate in a fall sport, that is one of the biggest college. If you're visiting a college, you're going to want to reserve those way in advance. That is a big weekend where a lot of our kids and families do go visit. So it's something to think about. It's an opportunity.
I actually applaud your agenda, and I totally agree with it. But I still think that even if we were to do that, we still have to talk about the day, the naming of the day. So is it possible to say, yes, let's have that conversation? We can't have it for this calendar because we're voting for it.
You can. Mark can raise the motion. You can vote however you vote on it, and it can be brought up later for another topic of discussion. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be, well, theoretically, if Mark brought the motion and it was seconded, and then, I'm saying if it were seconded, you could vote against it, I'm just saying, and then with the demand, put this on a future agenda item to be discussed.
Right, but rather than vote against it, couldn't we just agree that we would like it to be
however you want to do it.
I could make another motion to adjust the motion to hear it at another meeting. So
would there be support for that,
I-
having a conversation? I think it's, go ahead.
Question about that. If we were to do that, would, and we voted on a 2019-2020 calendar tonight, would we be able to then adjust that calendar sometime later this spring, whenever that discussion were to occur?
You can re-vote on a calendar later, if need be.
And, you know, and if it comes down to timing and, you know, we could go out to 2021, whatever, so I could remove my motion.
Well, let me suggest then either that you add it as soon as we vote on the other motions as a new motion, or we could vote on it right now and then move on to return to the other motions. That's totally up to you. As long as what you're saying is the motion would be something like to consider this question, right, rather than vote on it now, and then we will move forward on that.
That's fine.
Given the timing. So
Well,
it's up
let's
to you.
just
You can.
Business as usual, I'll remove the motion.
Okay,
Let's
right.
go with the business as usual, let's vote on this calendar, and then.
You can make an additional motion.
And if I could just, about it as a future agenda item, you guys have priority to do, you control the board agenda. We have a lot of things on the agendas with very limited numbers of meetings coming up. So I would say if you need it done, we need to know that right away to get that information. If you'd rather look at it for the following school calendar, then we could do it during the course next year. But we have late school start times, we have the budget, we have full agenda packs for the rest of the year.
Well, also my assumption is that we couldn't do it without some kind of preparation on your staff's part about what the implications would be, and that's also not going to happen anytime soon, in all fairness to your life.
That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, it seems to me there's everything from the implication of a 5-day week for the sciences to right. So, in fact, it can't happen soon.
Oh, it can happen.
Well, no, we could make it.
Control the calendar.
That's right. What I mean is, I don't think it should happen soon. Let me say that. So let's take that up as a motion, but understand that we're not going to move on it. We're not going to ask for it anytime soon. If that. Okay.
So I guess the question is that a future agenda item, or is it a motion from myself and seconded from somebody, if that's the case?
However you want to move forward with it.
Honestly, I think if you made a motion, it would elevate it in significance, even if it didn't happen until the fall. So I would advocate for that personally, but that's either way, we're going to tell you what to do.
Well, so more discussion, then do we look at 2021 or do we continue with this 1920?
Oh, at the moment, we have to continue with 1920.
No, but for the motion. So we would consider this particular calendar change going forward after this is done, right?
I think
that's
the
enough
implication,
time, Tom?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so hold that thought. Are there other comments? I do, yeah, any other discussion? I do want to say that just a couple of things. The first, of course, is that it is true that an overwhelming number of people didn't weigh in. On the other hand, an overwhelming number of the people who did weigh in and did feel strongly, more than 3/4 of them were actually advocating for a change. So it depends on what you mean by numbers. I just wanted to say, though, because I'm a historian, I'm part of an Indigenous Studies reading group, and just this month we're reading a book called Our Beloved Kin, which is about which is a retelling of King Philip's War, our King Philip's War, and brings up all kinds of things that I, as a historian of this, had no idea about. So it reminded me again of the importance of bringing in Native American views, Indigenous people's views on what happened. And so I would argue that it's, the reason that I would support it is that it's not to celebrate one group versus another, it's to remind us that there are multiple perspectives, and that we have to make room for them. And as long as you call it Columbus Day, there's not the implication of making room for them. If you call it Indigenous Peoples Day, no one's going to say, oh, that's right, we're only going to pay attention to them. Columbus is, as you all said, well recognized already. And so I don't feel any danger that if we call it Indigenous Peoples Day, that we're going to lose sight of the Columbus side. But I am worried that if we don't identify the other side, that we will just go on the original. And so I think we need to remind ourselves that there are multiple perspectives, particularly those that have been silenced. And at risk of getting even more nasty email, I'm not advocating this. I'm just saying, as a historian, I was struck today. Again, I went to a lecture on ancient Rome, and she was talking about this thing that happened in 67 BCE. And I thought, wow, now see, when I was a student, it was BC, right, before Christ. And I, as a nice Jewish girl, always thought, well, that's a little irritating, but I get it, you know. Well, so scholars after a while said, you know, we're not in a religious community in quite that sense. Not everybody is Christian. And so really it's before the Common Era would be a more appropriate thing, BCE. And it took me 10 years to get used to it. But now it is routine. That is what people say, BCE. So it's not that change can't happen, or that change is altering the truth. It is I think in a way, belated recognition that there are multiple perspectives. So I'm not advocating that I don't know what people will read into that, but what I'm saying is, in the same way, the idea of shifting BC to BCE is to say there are multiple views on this. We recognize the issue, but we don't want to privilege one particular perspective. That would be my argument about Indigenous Peoples Day. So that's just, I wanted to wait till the end because I didn't want to influence anybody else. Are there any other comments? Okay, just a reminder of the process. I'm going to ask first for a vote in support of the first calendar that was proposed, which has Indigenous Peoples Day listed as October 14th. If you are not in favor of that, vote no. If a majority does not vote yes, then we will turn to the second motion, the second calendar, which has it as Columbus Day. Okay? If neither of them pass, then we have a conversation. Then we come back to Explorers Day or whatever it is. Okay, so so when you're voting no, you're not voting no calendar, you're just voting no to this particular version of the calendar. Okay. All in favor of accepting the first version of the school calendar, 2019-2020, on page 2, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Are you opposed or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Abstain? I think that was everybody. Well, I know you're all shocked to hear it. The ayes have it. And we are passing number 1. And now let's move to the new motion proposed by Mark, right? Absolutely.
I propose a motion that we look at having the new Indigenous Peoples Day off for educational purposes, just as Veterans Day.
On, you mean? Not to take it off the off list.
Take it off the off list, yes, to have it, to go to school, yes.
Absolutely. And with the understanding that we will take it up in due course, as quickly as one can do without being unfair.
Right, and I just want to make sure the motion is that we look into it. And
right. We're not doing it or not doing it. We are investigating.
I didn't make a motion to decide it, but look into
Correct.
it with Tom's input from legal and such.
Okay, is the motion clear? Second? Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Oh, any discussion? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Was that a finger? No, Rob, you're good? Okay. Okay, any abstentions? Okay, Tom, we ask you when the dust settles, if you can start looking into this, we would appreciate it.
It's pretty dusty.
Yeah, absolutely, I understand. Yeah, those dust bunnies, they get pretty big. Okay, moving on then to new business, staff communication and reports. We turn to our beloved superintendent.
Okay, thanks. Email went out. We were back and forth with this all day. Tomorrow's was scheduled to be a unique day because it's the state SAT testing for juniors. And with uncertainty with weather tomorrow, and the thing that shifted was the high school is a full day while it was a regular Wednesday for elementary and middle school. Early on in the day, the forecasts were really bad, and as the day went on, especially the 4 o'clock run came in without the same kind of dangers, apparently, and we've talked to DPW, and with what's sticking on the road or doesn't stick on the road this time of year, we feel comfortable. We will be in school tomorrow, but we will not be having the SATs because we're going to move the high school back to a regular Wednesday, because we can't, once they start the test, we can't change our mind. So basically, so the high schools will be a shortened day. Email and phone call went out to all high school students. They understand this. All high school students will follow the regular Wednesday dismissal tomorrow at 12:48. And the SATs will be rescheduled to April 24th, which is the other state date for makeup. It's not unique. Simsbury and Farmington, Glastonbury, Hartford are all doing the same thing. I'm not plagiarizing, stealing their idea. This is just a regular part of the process.
And the other students were always,
They were already
always
on
a regular day.
So really, with it being a short Wednesday and with difficult weather moving in 2 to 3, it seems like, I anticipate we'll have a full short Wednesday tomorrow without the need to go to an emergency closing, the way things are.
I, on the other hand, who teach till 4 o'clock on Wednesdays, this is now the 4th time in a row that I have to decide what I'm going to do with my class. It's unbelievable. There's something about Wednesdays.
It is a Wednesday situation.
Something about technology, though, right? Because when we were kids, if they said there was going to be 12 to 18 inches, there was 12 to 18 inches, and it was like a week out. Now, 12 to 18 inches an hour ago at 4. This is unbelievable.
Yep.
Andy, I wouldn't want your job to have to call those days.
I don't know if this is too far off track, but I'm wondering if it might be appropriate for the board or perhaps for the superintendent to send a letter to the State Department of Education asking them to schedule the SAT in April next year instead of in March. I know that last year it was scheduled for something like April 6th, and I think when you schedule it in March, you do run the risk of sort of turning over people's lives preparing for the SAT as opposed to preparing for a regular school day. And if we can avoid that, that would be great.
I think one of the dangers of us moving our date to April 24th, the only kind of cautionary piece is it doesn't give us an opportunity for makeup. And we have strictures in place about percentage of students that must take the SAT. So we won't have as high a percentile. So I'm not sure, because I haven't spoken to them, if that's why they moved it back into March specifically for that reason, because April, again, you have the week off, and then they don't want to go into May because of AP testing. I'm not sure. I can certainly pass on and get any information I'll share with you about their thinking of the process. And I'll be with people at the end of this week that would know the answer to that. So, okay. So again, no SATs for tomorrow for juniors. That means you have one more month of Khan Academy you can practice and improve your scores. And if it's 20 hours, that equals 100 points typically. So there you go. I want to congratulate this past weekend, Charter Oak Odyssey of the Mind competed in the state Odyssey of the Mind competition, and all 3 Charter Oak International Academy teams led by Michelle Hadlock qualified to compete in the World Championship Odyssey of the Minds and are moving on to Iowa State University in May. So congratulations to our little friends over at Charter Oak. That is a great job.
I'd like to just say, expect fundraisers.
Yes.
They're going to need a lot of help getting all those students there.
That is correct. I also, because of the way the budget fell, I don't tend to do announcements. I missed, and I don't want to leave it behind. The Hall High School Jazz Band is one of 15 finalist bands to compete in the 23rd annual Essentially Ellington High School Jazz Band Competition Festival at the Lincoln Center on May 10th through the 12th. This is a huge honor. Bands from all across the country send in demo tapes to try to qualify for this. Over 100 send them in, and to be one of the ones sending them in, you're kind of an elite group. And this is the first time they've qualified since 2011. They're also the last Connecticut school to qualify, and now they're qualifying again. So good luck to them at the Lincoln Center, May 10th through the 12th. And a reminder, West Hartford's cooking is Saturday night. So those of you participating as chefs, cook well. And those of you coming, it is a great night. Yes, please. And wash your hands. And it is a great night for West Hartford Public Schools and raise a lot of money, and I will be there. So.
Thank you. I would have been there, but I'd just like to say that my mother is turning 80. So I know, it's a little intimidating. There you go. Well, no, it's just like, it is. It's like to think that your mother is 80. You know, I mean, I'm only 20, but still, if you know, it's just shocking. Anyway.
I just want to say my baby girl is turning 7 on Saturday.
Oh. Okay.
Since you gave a shout out to your mom.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
She turned 16 and she got her driver's permit today. All right, let's
All right. On that cheerful momentum, let's turn to a staff report and board discussion on career and technical education. I'm going to hear from the department from Mr. Brian Cohen.
So this is in response to a request before to get more information about our career and technical education department, which is really a great report to be able to give because there are so many highlights. And so I want to welcome Brian here, who's our department supervisor, and his excellent team of teacher leaders that are with him. We have Diana Nagler from Sedgwick Middle School and Mike Wilkos from Hall High School. So, turn it over to you. That would be embarrassing.
Thank you very much for...
Sorry. That's weird because I really have a loud voice, so Tom knows. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us, giving us an opportunity to talk to you about career and technical education here in West Hartford. My name is Brian Cohen, and I'm the department supervisor for CTE. I have with me Diana Nagler. She's a 7th grade Sedgwick Middle School technology and engineering teacher. I have Michael Wilkos with me. He is high school at Hall High School, technology and engineering. We also do business and finance. That's my area. That's my certification, as well as family and consumer science. So, quick background. I've been in the district for 16 years. I've had the pleasure of working in room 101 at Conard High School. 10 years teaching, 6 years department supervisor, and I teach one class. Had the opportunity to teach down the hall, diagonally from Tom for 6 or 7 years, and then to work under him, so it's been a pleasure. I do have a dream job, and I absolutely love it. I hope after this presentation and after the report, if you have any questions, we can answer them for you on our unique program. Okay, so our middle schools have 4 to 5 units of study in technology and engineering, grades 6 through 8. In 6th grade, we focus on exploring technology with transportation, engineering, and computer science units. In our 7th grade, we focus on engineering, manufacturing, robotics, and computer science. And in the 8th grade, we focus on communication, graphic design, engineering, career exploration, and computer science. So the one mainstay in our middle school program is definitely computer science. We're actually one of the few departments that has a true transition in computer science 6 through 8 in the hopes of launching students into our high school offerings. In the high school, we are an elective area, and therefore our high school students have many options to choose from within the CTE department. In our 3 disciplines, there are 41 courses total, and we cover a number of career interest areas. So that should lead us probably into a discussion on the college and career pathways. College and career pathways are a major focus for us in the CTE department. They are federal career pathways, and we focus on 6 of them in particular, grades 6 through 12. And they are business and financial literacy, communication technology, hospitality pathway, the health and human services pathway, manufacturing logistics, and of course STEM. We're not the only ones to focus in these areas. As you can see from the federal pathway wheel, which is a wheel with 16 spokes, this is actually not the federal wheel. This is the West Hartford Public Schools wheel, because we, being basically an authentic learning department, we decided that the 16 spokes and the 16 spokes only was a little confusing because as you can see from the courses, you have everything up here from the finance area to law to education and training, And the way the federal pathway wheel is, it just lines them up. And it doesn't really orient the students into any direction. So we've taken and changed it to give the wheel around the rim 6 major areas. Those are really our cluster areas that we like to focus on. And if you notice from the last slide, the Career and Technical Education Department focuses on 5 of the 6 areas that you're looking at. All our courses are aligned into this wheel, and all the courses actually at Connerton and Hall and at all our 3 middle schools incorporate aspects of this wheel. With the 16 federal pathways, we try to tie our courses and curriculums to this model. The object here is to make sure that we can align students with desired courses and interests so that in their post-secondary experience, whether it's a college or a career, that they have built a great foundation in West Hartford Public Schools and they have launched themselves in a direction that they feel comfortable in. From our pathways, we should probably talk about our assured learning experiences. Thanks to generous district funding and supplemental Perkins grant funding, our students are afforded industry standard technology and software in our labs and classrooms. Specifically, computer science is introduced and developed in all 3 grade levels, as I mentioned earlier. It starts in the middle school program in the hopes that it can build foundational skills for, along with manufacturing, engineering, and graphic design in the high schools. In business and finance, our major focus is on financial literacy for all students, and that is unwavering in our hope to provide all West Hartford public students with these essential life skills that hopefully will drive all of our finance and accounting courses. In family consumer sciences, our students run restaurants and community preschools, which are absolutely authentic and impressive, and I should probably apologize for Saturday because our career and foods classes will be there from both Hall and Conard, so you don't have a chance. Our high school curriculum incorporates national standards and competencies in 3 disciplines by stressing 21st century skills in problem solving, communication, and critical thinking. Lastly, but not least, our middle and high school programs have been recognized as State Technology and Engineering Programs of the Year. We were the first in the history of the award that they gave it to not just one middle school and not just one high school, but they gave it to one district for middle and one district for high school. Well, I'm proud to announce that in April, Michael Wilkos, here from Hall, and Rachel Kane, one of our other teachers from Sedgwick, will attend the ITEA conference in Atlanta and will accept middle school and high school National Program Excellence Awards. So it's an honor and an absolute privilege, and I'm surrounded by a group of professional teachers that impress me every day, and we're here to hopefully answer any questions you may have about career and technical education.
Wow, thank you.
I think this is wonderful, and I'm really glad that we require all of the middle school students to take advantage of the classes that are offered. I'm wondering if we know what the percentage is of high school students who take advantage of at least one class that's offered through career and technical education.
I believe the numbers are there. Unfortunately, it's not a massive number. It's not a huge number. We, in essence, will serve roughly 15% of the population at both high schools, roughly maybe 20 each year. So while they get full exposure in two rotations, or roughly 60 to 70 days, depending on which middle school they go to, they do get a good foundational experience. And with our 8th grade career awareness unit that we also provide in one of those rotations, our hope is that they will give one a try. The schedule is still obviously the issue. We're all aware of our high school schedules and some of the pitfalls that it has. So hopefully in the future we can address some of these issues and get kids to try all courses, not just career and technical education, but all the elective areas that we have.
Can I just piggyback on that before you go on? Because I had a similar kind of question, just so that I understand it. If they're choosing to take these classes in high school, then they're not taking an art class or whatever, right? There are those sorts of those choices are limited
Yeah,
in terms
it
of
wouldn't
slots.
necessarily be art, but it
Right.
could, it would be, are you taking a fourth year of a language, a fourth year of
Right, so once again,
science,
the
that kind of thing.
8-period-a-day schedule shows its limits.
You give me a
Just-
couple million more dollars,
Right.
I'll change that up.
It's a deal. I just wanted to understand how it worked. Okay.
The 25 credits is definitely something that we have been looking forward to. I know it's an issue with the town, and it's definitely a budget issue, but it hopefully will open some students opportunities to take some of our electives within the high school setting. That's a big piece. Career pathways are a huge piece. I started working on those 5 years ago in my second year in this position, working with school counseling in the hopes to create a program where we can start identifying student interest earlier and hopefully at least recommending the right courses towards those interests, so that if they do have one elective class available in their sophomore year or their junior year, that they can seek that route.
And I will jump in and say, I know Mike's seen great growth in his courses. And at Conard, we've seen a huge jump in our auto tech program over the past 2 years. We just did our FTs this week, and the numbers are,
We will have four
doubled.
full classes.
Yeah.
For the first time in probably 10 plus years. And it's going to be great for the community.
Brian, thank you. That was an awesome presentation.
Thank you.
And I'm biased towards Brian. Great teacher.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions, but I do want to thank you because your class, or the program in general, has really thrusted two people that I know personally forward in terms of the business realm. They're both on the path to business, and I want to attribute it to you and your introduction. And not only that, but the way you taught the class. I mean, you were one of their favorite teachers, and they just sang your praises. And even now, they still continue to do that. And the one that's a freshman is doing very well in her business path, and the other one is now a manager. So, I'd like to think that you had a lot to do with that. But as Tom brought up in terms of the automotive piece, I guess I want to ask, with the kids who participate in that and after high school in terms of graduating, do you track in terms of what they do with that piece, especially for those kids who may not want to go to college right away? That's one question. And then the other question, because I do believe you do this in terms of collaborating with private partners, whether businesses or other organizations.
Yes, and thank you very much for those great words. We unfortunately can't track too far because I think our data is limited to what we can actually get from our graduates. We do track where they go their first year when they're leaving Conard and Hall. We do have that information. On a side note, my teachers usually get lots of emails about where their students have gone. I know Michael got a very favorable email this year from one of his past students. If you want to share real quick.
I had a student who actually emailed me out of the blue, and it went into my folder to read on days when it's, stressful or tiresome to be out there. And he said, "Thank you so much for putting up with me. I know I wasn't the best student there. I know I had a lot of issues with some teachers." And he's like, "Sometimes with you, sometimes it wasn't." He's actually working out of Denver Airport now as a manager for American Airlines. The reason why I think I developed that personal respect with him is that one day we crossed paths over at the New England Air Museum, and he was there for, they have what's called like a fly-in simulation, where they come in, they set up huge flight rigs, 3 monitors, full yoke control systems, and I was there helping set up and network the things that are there. And he's like, "I didn't know you did this." Well, I'm like, I come here on weekends. This is what I do. And from then on, it was like, oh, what should I do for my computer system with this? What should I do for my computer system with that? And the email that I got from him just a couple weeks ago was I'm so glad I took the web design course because now I actually have to do some things with business management and web design. I'm so glad I had the robotics class because we do have to think about engineering aspects of things that are actually on the tarmac and ideas that we're actually expanding in. And then he's like, and I'm so glad I had the computer technology class because now I built my own machine that I use for my passion, which is interest there. So it was 3 classes I had with him. He wasn't a huge fan of the architectural design class, but I mean, 3 out of 4 ain't bad.
And to your second question, in regards to partnering and just reaching out to the community, we do have a pathways type system set up. One of our teachers does that with internships and job shadows for Hall and Connor students. We're always trying to grow that program. We do have a partnership as well. And yes, we are constantly looking for any kind of relation that we can build. I know in the automotive area alone, several businesses, Chaz McDermott is our teacher at Conard who does the automotive, and he has been in touch, this is his 2nd year now, and he's been in touch with quite a few businesses to partner because our goal is to work with the community and almost use our automotive program as a resource. So for instance, I can see some of our 2nd year students really enterprising and doing maybe oil changes or just some of the smaller repairs for community members in and around the Conard area. It would be financially beneficial to them, but it'd also be an incredible program for our students to not only do the mechanical work, but also to keep track of the business side, the enterprise side of it. So, thank you. Thanks.
So I've got this engine light on. Do you mind if I stop in tomorrow?
Absolutely.
So, I'm reading this CT Department Incorporated 21st Century Skills, and then I see photography darkroom. And I'm like, 21st Century Skills. Because there's this thing on Facebook, and it shows a film canister, and says, you're old if you know what this is. And I know what it is. I have an old Canon 81 program that takes 35 milli film. No.
I was going to say, there's a whole too much Facebook stuff
Really?
going on at this table today.
Can we go in there and revote that if that's the case? I'm interested because I really haven't seen that, and I didn't realize that. And before you answer that, also, we visited, I did a couple years ago, and you had a student building a snowboard. And I was literally blown away. I was thinking, well, mind you, when I was in school, I brought home the clock, and now they're bringing snowboards. So that was awesome to see. But the photography darkroom, could you talk to me about that? Because that's really a lost skill, with the digital age, most of your photographers are 100% digital. In fact, on my marketing hat when I was in business with that, it was all digital. For very high-end, like Pratt Whitney's things, and so I'm encouraged to see that there. I think that's great, and you have, is it 4 representing the 4 classes that you?
Yep, our photography it's actually started, photography and video is started in the 8th grade, both at all 3 middle schools. And they do a small piece with digital photography, SLR cameras, and even now they can use their own cameras, bring them in, upload them, and they are editing using Illustrator and Photoshop software starting in 8th grade. So I know for my wife and I, it was nice that both my kids went through that so they could help us when we were doing some editing and so forth, starting in the 8th grade. In 9th grade or any grade during high school, within the arts pathway, which will be over here, the arts pathway, we have graphic design photography 1 and 2, and that's where the dark rooms are introduced. We have full iMac labs, some of the best computers that you can get out there for doing graphic design, and obviously the focus is on digital photography, but especially for 2nd year students, there is something about getting into a dark room and being able to manipulate just photos, using chemicals, using paper, using light, that is just absolute experience that kids have to have, especially if they want to pursue the graphic design field. So we offer it.
That's awesome. So if I go to an art gallery, say at Conard or in town, can I identify whether it was film or digital? Do you guys differentiate?
I'll let you.
In the graphics 1 curriculum, one of the first projects they do before like we start to lose the daylight hours in the fall is they do a photo obscura camera, where basically they take their Quaker Oats canister, they have to paint the inside entirely black, adjust the aperture with a pinhole, and then in the darkroom they prepare the back panel of it, which is going to be the light sensitive film on the inside, and they're exposing the image onto that film, and they'll get an inverse of the negative on the film there, and then they'll expand it from there. The rest of the focus in the first year class after they do that activity is usually the digital cameras, whether it's the point and shoots or the SLRs. Beyond that, when the students go into the second year of the graphics curriculum, a lot of times they'll have that itch to say, well, we want to keep in the roots, we want to move away from this lossy compression when you're digitizing all these pixels, and we want to raw express the image and get it onto film. And I think we do have a couple of actual film cameras where you have to go in and you have, your hands in the sock bags where you're trying to put the canister in and you have to not expose the film. And I remember doing that when I was in high school, and I do see students doing it now as part of the second and third year class when that's their area of focus for their independent projects and their independent learning. So everybody does get that darkroom experience in graphics 1, and then it varies as it goes on what their interests are.
I'm curious if I could, just in terms of, I've been clear that I believe coding's a language that we have to treat as another language that our kids better be prepared for. And we give the high schools a lot of credit for it. I just want to talk, Diane, about the work really that the kids are doing, because I think in the middle school people are surprised by the depth and complexity of the computer work. If you could talk for just a second about that.
Yeah, so I personally do the robotics in 7th grade. So I know a couple months ago we had come in and gave you a little display. And I know it's, very cute to see the kids do that, but the work and the effort that goes into that, starting from 6th grade, is just fantastic. So 6th grade does Scratch, and it's all block coding. And I continue that in 7th grade, and then 8th grade does HTML. And this all directly ties into what they do at the high school, which I think that's the best part, is I get to see all of the students, and I get to give them all of that exposure, and then hopefully they can expand through the pathways at the high school. But yeah, like I said, that little tidbit that you saw of what they actually did, the hours of work that went into that, and they actually design their own programs. So they actually create programs for their classmates, say, hey, I challenge you to do this. Oh, well, let me hop on the computer and try it out. And they fail a million times, but that failure is the trial and error that gets them to the final product. So I love that we do it.
And Tom's right that it is a language, and
is.
Starting with Scratch and using Ozobots and using Bex IQ robots that we just updated at all 3 middle schools over the last 2 years has really gotten the ball rolling in the right direction, so that in the 8th grade they can start looking at HTML and CSS and a few other things that really, and of course, just like anything, we have a lot of high flyers, a lot of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students who are light years ahead of some of the students, and we really try to independently give them projects so that we can keep challenging them. And then once they get to the high school, there's so many different course options. They can take a business intro to computer science, a 1-semester business course that really focuses on just the visual aspects of creating through coding shopping carts on websites and so forth, really to get the visual. We have Exploring Computer Science. We have Computer Science AP Computer Science A, AP Computer Science Principles, which is what Mike teaches over at Hall. And all of these are teaching different aspects of different languages, but it's basically all a language. And once we get everyone on board and get everyone to realize that, our kids are just going to be much better off as they transition through the grades.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm very impressed with the program. And you just said something that rang a bell to me in terms of what they're teaching and what they're learning. And the reason your program sounds so impressive is that it seems as though it's tapping into other areas of learning. I'm thinking of Dr. Howard Gardner, who spoke about or has done research on multiple intelligences and acknowledging that there are other ways of learning, there are other ways of reflecting how intelligent someone is. And it certainly seems as though your program is tapping into that. And I imagine for young people, you kind of alluded to this with the email you got, who may have had some challenges challenges in one area, but this is an opportunity for them to excel in other areas and feel a sense of confidence and empowerment. So kudos to you, and thank you for the great work you're doing.
Thank you.
Just to tie on that, I have a new student teacher that started with me from Central Connecticut yesterday. And today, literally during my fourth period class, after we talked about our web programming class where they're working on making independent games, there was a student who had a really good aspect of his game working, and somebody else is working on a similar game. They're making clones of like Flappy Birds where you tap and it moves. And I said, oh, go look at this person's code. It's really well done. And so afterwards I'm talking with them, and I said, we got to think about multiple intelligences, where it lies, and then highlight the student success where they can and have them teach one another, because when they're teaching one another, when they're teaching something to somebody else, that's when they'll really remember it forever. And that literally happened today, and that's literally the point I made. I'm saying literally too much. Not going any further.
Actually, if I can, before you start, just to piggyback on what you're asking, I was wondering if you did these programs at places like Strive and Wave and the other, I can't remember what the one is called, Reach, thank you, because it seems to me that those kids in particular would really benefit from multiple ways of expressing themselves.
We do have a business and finance teacher at Reach. She also does some of our pathways work, our school to careers work. So we are incorporating a lot of the business and finance when it comes to financial literacy, when it comes to career planning, career awareness, some of those real skills. We do not have them at Strive, and we also don't have technology and engineering or family consumer science at Strive either. But students at Reach can definitely, first and eighth period, can potentially take a CTE course. And we do have several students who do take advantage.
Our new building at Strive may give us the opportunity to do this too.
Excuse me.
The other thing I want to add is when Strive was at Wampanoag, there were students who did spend split days, and sometimes they'd see me where they'd just come for the period and then they'd make their way back to Strive. So there was incorporation there with that.
I'm sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's right. I wasn't sure I was going to say anything, but they put me on the spot. Thank you. But I was thinking it. I mean, I just want to say congratulations to all of you, and the picture of the whole department. I'm very well aware that you have those days where you are not hearing things that you like from certain people in the community, no matter how hard you try. And Mike, that was a great story. Keep that with you. I mean, when you get those students that reach out to you, you hold on to those. So I thoroughly enjoyed this presentation. I would say, Paul does a lot of good stuff up here too, but this was probably my favorite one.
Oh, thank you.
Did you hear that, Paul?
Yeah.
I'm happy to be on the
Yeah. So no, that's not what I'm saying at all. Don't misread that at all. But no, I just thought this was a really interesting and great update, and just keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for representing us so well in this town. So thank you.
Okay, my turn. So first of all, I wish you could see my point of view. All the fingers were on the buttons here like it's a game of Jeopardy. They all want to get questions, and that's awesome. Another thing you guys do, the culinary crew, is it breakfast or lunch they make on Veterans Day?
We do the Veterans Breakfast at both schools. We do several breakfasts. We also like to take care of our custodians, so we always do custodian dinners throughout the year. We have student restaurants. Staff can eat. Unfortunately, students can't eat from the student restaurants. It would go against the contract. But our staff are given the opportunity to eat at the student restaurants, where our students not only prepare the menus and the meals, but they also deliver them with a smile. And it's a big hit at both Conard and Hall.
I can personally attest to how quickly the Google Docs fill up of the orders for the menu. There's a limited number of spaces they can accommodate in a given Friday or Thursday and Friday when they do their menus, and it fills up quick.
Oh, that's great. Great. Now, you were very kind when I first came on the board. I think you were the first person who didn't know me as Mrs. Pauluk's husband. You knew me as a board member, so you're good in my book. Thank you very much. But you gave me a tour, and one of the treasures we have is that auto shop. I still call it auto shop. That'll be tough for me to change the name. Okay. And I was very pleased to hear the full class sessions there going on. That's great. I took auto shop in high school, joined the Army as a self-propelled field artillery systems mechanic, and then I found out I wasn't really good at it. But, but I had fun, and I really enjoyed it. Yes, I did. I can change oil and fix a flat tire. So it's great. But I have a couple questions about that. How are we doing with tools in the auto tech shop there? And I haven't had a chance. Does Hall have something similar? Do the kids there have an opportunity?
Unfortunately, Hall doesn't. The program was gone before I got here 16 years ago, so I'm guessing it was something like 20-ish years ago. We only have the robotics, electronics, and engineering, architecture, and graphic design going on at Hall right now. At Conard, we have a very large space, 3 bays, 2 lifts, full automotive lab. As far as the inventory and our tools, we are in very good shape. We could always use more. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But we do have a very nice district funding, thankfully. Tom has stood behind our department, and the funding has always been there, and it's allowing us to do really great things. And we also have a Perkins grant. The CTE area is one of the few areas that has a vocational grant, an annual grant every year. With ties, we do have a lot of have to deal with a lot of assessments, and we're constantly looking at standards and competencies within our courses. But it's well worth it because the funding we get allows us to do some incredible things. If you ever get a chance to come to Hall or Conard, come see our laser engravers, come see our CNC router, come see at Conard the automotive lab, and really what the kids are doing in the automotive lab, because they're not watching an instructor. They're working alongside each other collaboratively, doing projects where the 3rd period class starts it and the 4th period class finishes it. And the 3rd period class has to leave notes for the 4th period class, and they have to label all the bags so the kids know where all the parts came from. They're doing great things, and we have great equipment to back it up. And we're really lucky to work in West Hartford, and our kids are really lucky to have the experiences that they have.
And just to piggyback, because he's not giving himself enough credit, when people ask about grants, and are people going after grants, Brian's one of the people that's always going after grants, especially the Perkins grant. And I know because I have to sign off on them all the time, and he and I are in contact all the time. I'm forwarding him emails that, like, what is this? So,
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then one last point to address on there. It's been a handful of students, but again, same thing at Hall. When the schedules align and there's like an auto shop at the beginning of the day, students can go to Conard and then trade a free period for a travel period, and then finish their day at Hall, or vice versa. Where I've had students, I can think of like 5.
We've almost every year we've had them. I think next year we're going to have 2, if I'm not mistaken. A parent on the Hall side, when I coached her son in football, made me promise that I would be able to get him over there. So he's a senior next year, so that's his year.
I know I always say when I get time, I want to sit in on some college classes, but I never thought I would want to sit in on some high school classes. But I really want to go back. I can't believe the stuff that you guys are teaching. It's totally cool. And also, I want to say that my T-shirt, not to get everybody else jealous, but I took the T-shirt, and I get more compliments on that T-shirt than anything else. It's really, oh, that's so cool. That's really, it's great. I just had a quick question about the student restaurant. Now that we do have a corporate-sized kitchen, whatever the word is, commercial-sized kitchen, is there a way for your program to take advantage of that? Or this is at ASD?
Oh, okay.
So we haven't really talked about that yet because it's not up and running yet.
Oh,
so,
sure.
yeah.
But is there a hope
there
that
could
maybe
be. It depends on what the timing is.
Transportation and stuff.
Utilized. Yeah.
Yeah, it just occurred to me that since it was somewhat close, it might be an opportunity.
Well, and I think that's, it's one of those things, that program is always shifting. And I know we mentioned the pastry.
Baking and pastry arts.
Baking and pastry arts, which went from 0 to... What do you have, 80 or
88 kids at Conard and 84 at Hall next year.
Oh my God, that's great. And I just want to say we all as a board went from one meeting to another, and I for one I would have hired you for some pastries had I known. So,
after my own heart.
That's right. Anything else? Thank you. This is really remarkable, and thank you, Carol, for asking for this. That was just great.
Thank you very much for having us.
Our pleasure, and now we get a personnel report from Mr. Rick Ledwith.
Good evening, everyone. The personnel report is on page 9 and 10. And as you can see, we've hired 2 contracted teachers since our last meeting and 7 interim teachers. It's been a little bit busier than normal, I think, given the higher than expected leaves that we've seen this year. We don't generally see these types of numbers at this point in the year. We also have, as you can see, 2 retirements in this month's report as well. So our retirements are up to 14 for the end of the school year. And I think at the last personnel report, I thought we would get to like 25. We were on that track, and I'll probably have to retract that now. I think we'll end up at around 20. I think we'll see some, another half dozen as we move through the end of the school year, but we'll probably end up at around 20 retirements versus where we were last year, which was 25. And as we head into the spring, certainly calendar-wise, if not weather-wise, unfortunately, we have several teacher career fairs that we are going to be attending throughout the state of Connecticut. One of them will be right at Conard High School when we host our own career fair. And that will take place on April 5th as we convert Conard High School into our own mini convention center. So we have invitations for everybody. So we would like to invite you to join us that evening as we welcome about 200 teachers to Conard High School. We'll have about 60 administrators and teachers on site helping us interview all of these candidates. And it's certainly a great opportunity if you're there to help us welcome these folks. Certainly a great opportunity for us to meet these individuals, but as importantly, a great opportunity for us to showcase West Hartford and all that we are able to offer these teaching candidates. So again, that is April 5th from 4 to 6 at Conard High School. So if you can join us, please do so. We also have another important career fair for us is our Minority Teacher Recruiting Fair, which takes place in East Hartford on March 28th. That's next Wednesday. That's a signature minority teacher recruiting event for us that takes place every year. So historically, we have an opportunity. We've been going for the last 10, 11 years. It's given us a great opportunity to meet with a large number of minority teachers. And we'll have about a half dozen teachers and administrators on site with us interviewing candidates and hopefully recruiting them to West Hartford. If you remember from the fall, 22% of our new teachers were teachers of color, which was one of our more successful years, and we're going to look to build on that as we head into the next school year and school years beyond as well. We also have on April 4th, we'll be at the NEAG School of Education Career Fair out at UConn, and that's been a great event for us year after year. We usually walk away from that event hiring about 4 to 5 new teachers every year, so hope to build on that success again this year. And then on April 3rd, we have the Central Connecticut State University Career Fair, so we'll be on their campus as well, meeting with their graduating teaching class this year. So that's four big events over the next 2 weeks, going to give us a good opportunity to get a jump start on some of our hiring for next year. So we'll keep you up to date as we finish up those fairs and let you know how we did. In terms of administrator openings, we do have one that I mentioned in our last report. We had John Guidry, who's our assistant principal at Hall High School, who's taking on a principalship in Ellington. And we posted that position last week, and we have 140 applicants as of this evening, so great turnout. We still have 2 more weeks for folks to apply for that position. And we've been screening those resumes and applications as they've been coming in. And we're really excited about the quality of our internal and external teacher leaders and are very confident that we're going to find our person in this pool. So we'll certainly keep you up to date as we move through the next few weeks in that recruitment process. So that summarizes everything that's been happening from a human resources standpoint over the last few weeks. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board had.
I just have a quick question. I know you've answered this before, and Tom has. How many steps are there again?
We have 12 steps in our teacher contract.
Okay.
Yeah. So
down from 17 when I was
we used to have
hired.
17, and we compressed that for folks that were involved in some of those negotiations. We compressed. So it used to take a teacher 17 years to get to the top step. Now it takes a teacher 12 years, which is making us a little bit more competitive in the marketplace. A lot of our comparable districts have 12 to 14 steps, so.
It's a great sign that we're doing all these recruiting fairs. It means we are hiring again, which is wonderful.
Yes, it is.
So
Yeah,
that's really,
absolutely.
that's great news.
So join us in a couple of weeks if you can.
Cool.
Thanks.
It sounds fun.
All right.
Other comments? Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Take one of these and pass them around.
Absolutely. Now we go from the interesting new business to what are called routine matters. And the first is the approval of the minutes. If I can have a motion that we approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of March 6th, 2018.
So moved.
Second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Remarkably, the ayes have it. I know. Next is information and reports from board members. Where's our students? Oh, there they are. Okay. Anything from the board?
I just have a quick announcement, I guess, in terms of information. CREC is going to be sponsoring their annual meeting, which is going to be a breakfast event this year. So I'm asking members to hold the date of Wednesday, May 16th. I don't have the time yet. As soon as I do, I'll pass that on.
Breakfast meeting?
Yes.
That's actually always fun.
And I believe it's going to be, where's it going to be? Wadsworth. It's going to be at the Wadsworth Athenaeum with parking at the Hartford Club garage on Prospect Street.
They always have good food, so I am there. Absolutely, we're not going down that. It's not our budget. We have our own issues. Absolutely, absolutely. Anything else? Oh, yeah.
Just a reminder, the board has public budget forums coming up on, and I'm going to get the dates right here. Tomorrow? Thursday. Here we go. I wrote it down. Thursday, March 22nd, 7 p.m. at King Philip in the auditorium. And then we'll do it again on Tuesday, March 27th, 7 p.m. in the Duffy Auditorium. All are welcome. We'll run through the budget, answer any questions from the public they might have, hear their input, and we look forward to seeing anyone and everyone who'd like to join us.
Absolutely. This is something we do every year. We just try to make it possible for anybody who's interested to hear about the board. It's very informal. So come, we'll tell you what we're thinking. We'll like to hear what you're thinking. And again, that doesn't replace the other open meetings, but this is, the more formal meetings, but these are two just open meetings.
Cheryl, I'm sorry, quick.
Sorry.
I know in the past, we've had a difficult time communicating with the PTOs from each individual school. I just want to make sure that emails have gone out to each PTO leadership or however it works. So,
Yes,
okay.
we, through the Parent-Teacher Council, we distributed information, and I actually saw a blurb in the Conard newsletter that came out today, so it's getting there. We learned a little bit about the time, and we're just going to set the dates next year, probably the same third week in March, and get that information out earlier, so we make all those school newsletters that come out. Thanks for asking.
Anything else? Okay. No other information or discussions, I assume? And so, in fact, next to the younger kids, our favorite part of the evening, the student representatives.
So I saw all of you guys there, but as you know, the senators came to Conard, and this was an amazing learning opportunity. I thought it was super cool. And as a student, I'm really proud of the questions that my peers asked, and these were difficult, complicated, complex questions that they asked, and it took a lot of courage of them to ask not only to their elected officials, but also a room of 500 plus of their cohorts. So it was a great morning, and I'm really proud that they came to Conard. Additionally, You're in Town, which was our play, finished this past weekend. We had the first time having a school-wide assembly where our students could see like a preview of the play, and that was really beneficial, and students actually really appreciated it. They loved it. A lot of students that never really opened their eyes to the theater part of our community got to see what it was like, and they really enjoyed it. Additionally, I was supposed to say the SATs are tomorrow, but just kidding, everyone. For the WEHA cooking, instead of Mr. Duarte cooking, the Career in Foods class will be cooking. So come and stop by that booth. Also, spring sports just started, but the snow is making it a little bit hard.
These past 2 weeks at Hall have been very busy. Most notably, Hall students organized a walkout in conjunction with many schools across America in response to the Stoneman Douglas shootings this past February. I just wanted to read an excerpt of one of the speeches that was very powerful from Senior Dylan Landau. He said, "It could happen to us. We could, as one of the survivors described, be just another name, Hall High School. We have all thought about it. We have all put ourselves in their shoes." A student explained that now, when people ask where he came from, he would be met with apologetic looks and responses. Stoneman Douglas is like Sandy Hook, is like Columbine, is like Virginia Tech. It is impossible to not worry that Hall will join that list. It is too relevant a reality to ignore it. We do not want to become another name. So, as you recognize from this excerpt, some of the speeches that were shared were very powerful and impactful, and I'd like to thank Dr. Greenberg, Mr. Polyuk, and I don't know if anyone else came, but for coming to the walkout. It was really nice to see you guys there. And then yesterday, I, along with some other peers of mine, had the privilege of attending a panel on gun violence at Conard High School. Especially after the walkout, it was very special to hear Senators Murphy and Blumenthal, along with other panelists, talk about their actions to combat gun violence. Pops and Jazz was very successful these past 2 weeks. Almost every night was sold out, and it was awesome to see how talented my peers are. They're just all great at dancing, singing, acting, everything. Then the Hall girls basketball team made it to the state finals this past weekend. Many students came out to Mohegan Sun to support our girls. Congratulations to the team for their hard work and accomplishments this season. Congratulations to English teacher Jennifer Lanise, who won UConn Alumni Award for Outstanding School Educator. Junior Ray Gutchin ran a prom dress drive, and over 50 dresses were donated for those who cannot afford dresses of their own. And yeah, there is no SAT tomorrow, as Grace said. Yeah.
Let me underline that.
Yes. We get out at 12:48. Good news. Okay, thanks.
Exactly. Thank you both. It was an amazing and very moving event. Actually, both the walkout and the forum, both were great. So thank you all for hosting that. Okay, future business. I will say again, to repeat Dave's comment, only to encourage more people to come if they like. We're having public comment and discussion on our budget Thursday at KP at 7, and then March 27th, which is a Tuesday, at Duffy, also at 7. Other than that, on March 28th is a more formal public hearing at 7 o'clock, where everyone is welcome to come and make comments, feedback about the budget. It's followed by a Board of Education workshop number 2, which means that we talk more about the budget that's in front of us. On Tuesday, April 3rd, is a regular Board of Education meeting and the adoption of the budget, also, of course, at 7. And then Tuesday, April 17th, another regular board meeting where we will try to deal with everything else other than the budget. Request for future agenda items that we haven't already named.
This is not a request for a future agenda item, but I did want to just let anyone know who's still watching or who watches this meeting that if you would like to look at all of the budget documents, they are available on the WHPS.org website. So everything is very transparent, and if you have any comments to make, but you can't make it to the public hearing, then you should take advantage of the very easy way to email all of us at one time or drop us a line any way you would like.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank all of you who have already gotten involved in various comments. We like to hear from everybody. Okay. All the hordes of people who are still managed to stay awake want to say anything? All right. I guess that's a no. There is no executive session, and so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Poof, we're adjourned.
Must have got a or something.